I am at work. They're at work, so they'll be jumping off in a bit. Like I know Sarah is at work and she'll be jumping on. Priscilla, it's great to see you all the way from Harare, Zimbabwe. Are you in Kwekwe or Zim? Ah,
I'm in
Harare.
Kwekwe. I'm in
Oh,
Kwekwe. How are
nice.
you?
That's my hometown, guys. That's my hometown. So, representing, super proud of you, Priscilla. It's always a pleasure. So, Priscilla is
Thank
joining us
you.
from the Midlands province of Zimbabwe, town called Kwekwe, which is my small town, our small town where I grew up, and all the way from Zimbabwe. And then we do have Catherine Alo from Uganda. And we have our keynote speaker and moderator for today from the United States, Dr. Shirley Pierre Robertson. And we will have from Canada joining us, Netsai Nomhle Walang, Mbanga Walang. And then we also have from South Africa, we are going to be having Sarah Mia. And I believe from Kenya, we are going to be having Jessica Kamau. So it's going to be a very interesting panel, all experts in their own rights, all of them greatly vast studies with they hold, I think, Priscilla, on you hold two masterses. And so we have, and it's I know she did psych and theology. So her and Dr. Shirley, when they meet, it's going to be interesting. So all of you, this is exciting, and we know Sarah yesterday she gave a very informative presentation. So Mama Shelley, just to give you a background of your panelists today, they are jam packed, and we hope to learn from each and every one of you, because this is an area where we need resources and tools, and not so many of us know how to uh, either handle trauma, how do we handle our survivors, and sometimes ourselves as practitioners, as caregivers, we don't know when to stop. And who better to tell us today? The experts themselves. So if you have grabbed your chai, coffee, tea, sit back, and we hope you'll be able to gain so much and more. Monica and I are totally excited, and we want to give thanks and shout out to Linda working with us around the block. And we are all working from 3 different countries. I want us to appreciate that. I appreciate each and every one of you. So, once again, before we get started, we want to welcome you to day 5, where we focus on healing minds, mental health, and wellness, where we look at mental health support for the sexual gender based violence or survivors, compassion fatigue, mental health and self care for the SGBV caregivers. Because we are busy taking care of everyone else, we're busy going to do the work, but when do we take downtime? And then how we talked about empowerment yesterday. We want you to be able to share with us some of the tools when it comes to handling aspects including recovery and trauma. How do we handle that? And again, we'll look at sexual gender-based violence mental health care providers, those practices, the trauma-informed care practices for sexual gender-based violence mental health providers. So we are hoping this gem-filled session will leave everyone empowered. At least whatever happens today, I hope you'll be able to walk away with something. So once again, welcome to day 5 of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence against women and girls. We are saying in the collective, violence is not an excuse, and we say no in our collective voices. So without further ado, I'll take this moment to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Shirley Regina Pierre Robertson. And I always have the pleasure of reading this bio over, and I've read it like 20 gazillion times over the 5 years, I can tell you that. But I never get, she never ceases to amaze me. Each year she comes on the platform, and I tell you what, today, this morning, we all told her, Mama Shelley, you look young. You all see her today. And Mama Shelley just challenges us all that you got to keep working. And I will then take this moment. Dr. S. Regina Pierre Robertson is an ordained apostle, mental health professional, leadership retreat consultant, stress management, life purpose coach, author, transformational speaker, educator, entrepreneur, and program and conference developer. She is the founder and president of New Dimensions Global Fellowship Incorporated in Fort Lauderdale, developed to address the need for the purpose-driven care from the pulpit to the pew. She's the visionary and co-creator of New Dimensions Global, a faith-based community mental health initiative that is designed and inspired with the moral imperative to go beyond current world systems, doing no harm, but moving with a quest that is intentional and significant to initiate transformative change within the global village. And the Global Leadership Mental Health Summit, uh, which was successfully launched on WHO World Health Day 2020, has a virtual summit in accordance with the United Nations SDG number 3 of 2030. As an experienced and well-respected minister and kingdom trailblazer, she has over 56 years of professional expertise in mental health. As a result of this, Dr. Pierre Robertson utilizes the duality of her experiences in ministry and mental health to impart powerful life transforming kingdom principles and strategies, the likes of which have opened up a portal for meaningful and collaborative communication to occur on New Dimensions Global platform. These intentional conversations are meant to reach world leaders, stakeholders, corporations, community heads, and those who are endued with the power to positively impact the global trajectory for sustainable and attainable mental health services within the context of policies and good governance, which fosters diversity, inclusion, thereby creating mental equity for everyone, everywhere, and everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're tuning in from, help us welcome Dr. Shirley. We know her. I barely use Regina, but we call her Mama Shirley. She comes with so much wisdom. And I hope and trust you all take a back step and listen in and tune in. Get your pen and paper because you always leave with something from Dr. Shirley. Take it away, Mama Shirley. And it's always a pleasure. Always.
You, Maria. Oh my goodness. That person you described sounds to me as such a wonderful person. I'd really love to get to meet her and know her. I'm trying to know her for who she really is. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to say hello, welcome to everyone, everywhere in the global village. Maybe it's good morning for some, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. I'd just like to say to you, welcome. Welcome today to this narrative, not just a narrative, but it's a work that continues. Even though it's an energizing work, but there's a sadness in this work. There's a sadness because we're continuing with the same old fight, trying to get others to understand how important and that there's no excuse for gender-based violence, sexually and physically, wherever it fits into the context, there is really no excuse for it. So this morning, I'm here. I'm here on purpose, for a purpose. And that is to remind us. I know some of what I may say would be redundant for you. This is day 5, and you may have heard it before. But sometimes we got to repeat, because repetition is a good way of keeping what we need to keep alive in mind, to know that this is serious business. We're talking about life and death, but we're coming with it through the realm of mental health, through the realm of the mind that you and I have heard before. Is said a mind is a terrible thing to waste. A mind is so beautiful. If we can follow the trail and how the manufacturer, the creator, created these minds that you and I have, if we can understand the role that the mind plays in terms of how we see ourselves, how we carry on day-to-day living, how we realize that it is so important for us not only to take care of us, but also to take care of others and be so endued with the power and to give power to others to take care of themselves. Mental health we're talking about. And today we're looking at, I just want to quickly go through with you to start about the healing of the mind. Now, why would we look at healing the mind? As I said before, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And it is from the mind we develop and broaden that concept of mental health. Now, what is mental health? Mental health is, according to the World Health Organization, a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities. You realize your own abilities. You can cope with the normal stresses of life. So when things happen, you don't just break down, fall to pieces. You can cope. You can stand back. You can look and say, though this may not be the norm, but I am not going to allow this to get me to fall apart. I have the wherewithal. I have the mental capacity to cope, because this is just a passing phase in my life. It did not come to destroy me, but many times the issues that we're dealing with, it comes to make us strong. So I can cope with the mental stresses of life. I can work productively in spite of what's going on. And I can also work fruitfully. And I am able to make a contribution to my life and my community. Now, this is how the World Health Organization sees good mental health. Now, I want you to realize this, which you've been talking about, that, as I heard Maria say, there is no excuse. There is no excuse for that which we continue to deal and work with. Because good mental health is the birthright. Everyone who is birthed was birthed with a promise of good mental health. Now, that's not just for some people, but it's for everyone in the global village. So when we look at when we have good mental health, The need to shame and to blame, the need for self-worth is not an issue to take that right from someone. The need for trust, for hope, that there won't be hopelessness. How we envision each other from a cultural perspective. And sometimes that's the issue we're dealing with. We're dealing with mental health from a cultural perspective. So that what is normal in one place may be abnormal in another place. One place, a woman's rights are important. Another place, no, the woman does not have rights of her own. It may come across that the woman is there to be controlled. But if we realize that when you were manufactured way back, and in the beginning, we were told that you have no control over another person. You control the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, everything that creeps and crawls on the ground. You have control over that. But you do not have control over another human being. You cannot decide for them. That is not your territory. And somehow we have a difficult time in terms of letting go and allowing others to be and become that which they were created to be and become. We're talking about mental health. So I'm not going around in a tangent. It all comes together to make what we call mental health. It's your ability to co-create. It's your ability to create. It's your ability to cope. It's your ability to make decisions that are strong, that are ethical, that are moral. You're coming from a moral perspective of making good, sound decisions about your life and your body. That is good mental health. But not everyone experiences good mental health. So this is why we find ourselves here today. And do you know, recently, not that I didn't know about it, but recently we're beginning to take note of what we call colorism. Colorism is also a part of good mental health. I don't know about you, but where I was born in Trinidad, colorism was an issue because if you were too dark in a family, you were put on a lower end of the ladder, of the scale. If you were too dark, if you were fair, you were seen as one that would bring opportunities, you had capabilities, and you had the capacity to lift your family maybe from where they are to where they feel they ought to be. Didn't matter whether even if your color were dark, but you were a scholar, colorism played an integral role in your mental health, how you saw yourself, because of how other people addressed and saw you. Again, I'm talking about good mental health. All of these are atrocities that leads to what we find ourselves almost 30 years later from what was decided in Beijing to be a platform so that we can eradicate that which we find ourselves dealing with today. sexual abuse, physical abuse, gender-based violence. It has an impact on us. Why? Because of the trauma. Because of the trauma that takes place. And trauma, as you know, has memory. Trauma loves drama. Trauma is also embedded in our cells, in our bodies, and trauma, when triggered by a past experience, by something someone may say, something that may be done to you, it has a way of bringing back memories that we would say, well, I thought this person had gotten over. How is it they're still responding this particular way? Didn't they get over that? We're coming today talking about trauma. We're coming today talking about compassion fatigue. We're coming today talking about how can we recover? What are the skills that we need in order to, what are some of the strategies that we need in order to help people to come out from where they are so that they can utilize what was given to them from birth, which is good mental health? How do we foster the realization? How do we build good mental health with each other so that there is no need to be violent? There's no need to be abusive. When someone says no, it is said by Lisa Nichols that no is a complete sentence. So if someone says no, you don't have to beat and force them to do anything. Could you imagine mental health in an environment in which they said, in your own home is the most dangerous place for a woman? Could you imagine having good mental health and having to be vigilant and always on the lookout for signs as to, what do you say? Did I say something wrong? If I make this move, is it going to upset the person? Am I going to, quote unquote, aggravate someone to the point where I can become a punching bag? Am I still dealing with cultural innuendos and underpinnings that a girl is a commodity that can be sold? Are we still there? Are we still there? Or is it time that we should move from there? From there, we need to go to that place called there and deal with some of these things so that we can be free. We can be free. No more excuses. My mind is such a beautiful thing. My mind was created that I can be and become every and anything that I would want to be and become. So we need to understand, as we work with trauma, as we work with compassion fatigue, as we whatever it is we're working with, to support those who have been the recipients of violence. How do we work with them to get them to understand that their mental health is their wealth? Well, ladies and gentlemen, today, I would like to let you know that mental health, our mental health, is sacred. It is sacred to everything that we do. How we see ourselves comes through the lens of good mental health. Mental health, to stop for one moment and say, you know what? I deserve better than this. I do not have to stay in this kind of situation. And even if you go for help and help that is not forthcoming for you, well, we have the capacity to look, we have the capacity to search out, and it's platforms like this that gives us the strength, that motivates us, encourages us, and pushes us forward to get involved. Let us get involved. Let us get involved today. Let us deal with the issues that are at hand. Because, as I said, it's about the mind. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. And all of your creativity, all of the thoughts that you have, good thoughts for yourself and for your surroundings, for your capacity to be and become that which you were created to be and become. The mind, your mind. We're out to heal your mind and get you to understand that good mental health is yours. So it is a matter of coming to that junction where mental health and spirituality merges so that you can believe in yourself that you were created to be and become that which you were sent here to fulfill. You didn't come here by accident. It wasn't an incident. But your being here is intentional. See yourself as being intentional. And when you do that, you can begin to learn to love yourself, begin to look at yourself for who you really are, and begin to speak those things that are not as though they are. So though I may be in an abusive situation, I was not created to be abused. I am wonderful. I am beautiful. I'm strategically positioned. No one can hold me down. No one can destroy me unless I believe that I do not have the capacity to make a turn in my life. We're talking about mental health today in the global village. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Mama Shirley, Dr. Shirley. It's always an honor when we have you grace the platform or the stage. And I always want to acknowledge the blessing when you graced us in the physical in Texas in 2023. You left an imprint and you continue to leave imprints. And we hope the good God we serve continues to lead and guide you as you share and pour more wisdom to all. And we move on. Like I promised you that today it's going to be jam-packed. And we have Netai Mbangawalang. I'm always honored to share the platform with her. I'll put a disclaimer out there. She is not only just witty, so during her presentation, do not be surprised. She has so much wit and humor. She'll pour into you. But she's also has that intellect, the mind. Sometimes she leaves us wondering, how did she get there? What was she thinking? But today, she will not only be here to present as an intellect, as a mother, as a daughter, as a sister, but she's there to share and empower so that when you leave the platform, you'll be able to take away some nuggets, be able, like Mama Shelley already reminded us, that you'll be able to remind yourself that you are beautifully made, that your mind is such a beautiful thing. It is sacred. Your mental health is your wealth. But today, we are here to heal minds, to be informed, so that we live better and are able to do the work that we are purposed. So let's be intentional in our listening. Let's be objective. Let's give ourselves permission to take in. So we want to welcome Nitzai and to the platform. I will say Nitzai is a community development practitioner and with the Riverside School Board. She is a Concordia University alumni. She is a mother, as I said earlier. That's a role she takes very prideful. She's a sister. She's a great communicator, one who you will tell as you see. She's an educator and many other roles that she plays. So I will without further ado, I'll bring Netsai onto the platform. And we want to say to her, welcome and good morning, all the way from Quebec, Canada. Says Jean Richelieu, Quebec, Canada. Welcome, Netsai.
Hi, hi everybody. I hope you can all hear me. Um, after the way Maria introduced me, I mean that's a tall order. You know, I I all those labels of being what I am. I feel the most important one is being a learner as well. So I see myself as an experiential learner. I continue to learn. I continue to absorb as much as I can, with the continuity of my living. Um, and yes, we still have quite a bit of work to do, particularly with, in our role of being women. And obviously, this particular subject matter that we are all gathered here for is is it's very fundamental for me, not just because I'm a woman, but again, it's because I'm a mother, like Maria particularly said, and I've been gifted to be a mother of three daughters, right? So the legacy continues, and this just doesn't end here. The learning just doesn't end here. The learning continues with my children and hopefully with their children. So it's a continuity of time, right? And this is a learning that will continue to breed something. Here's hoping. So I'll dive into something that I've said I continue to learn. It is, I wouldn't want to call myself an expert in anything, because I think all of us continue to sponge from each other. Learning is part of what we are doing in conversation, in dialogue, and in our sharing. And so today I would like to share, the little of what I think we can learn from one another. So I don't know if I'm able to share my screen.
Absolutely. Mamacita, is Netai able to, or if you can share?
She's able.
You are able to.
Okay, so where would I go to do that?
Go
The
into your share
the green
screen.
button. Sorry, Maria. The
Go
bottom,
ahead, Mamacita.
you can have it in the bottom, or you can.
Yes, I see that, the green, okay, with the arrow, yeah?
Yes, that one. Just click there and you can share.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to start with, our dear old PowerPoint. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
So I'm just going to do a very small presentation, and here's hoping we can have a conversation around it. We are a small table, and I look at presentation as very stiff. I think conversations are way better because through conversation, we're able to have a discussion. So please don't hesitate to jump in. Don't hesitate to dialogue with one another and with me. So when we're looking at this, we are here obviously for the next 16 days to talk about something that is very dear to all of us, which is breaking the silence, empowering women and men now, right? Because we do know it has become more of violence is just not gender, it's no longer gender specific or gender related. It's human. And we are here to end that violence. And here's hoping also to heal the minds. And we have to look at it from a holistic perspective. As we are raising our children, we are raising men as well. We are raising our boys. And this room that we are in, we are saying, as much as we are empowering the girl child, and we are saying it has to stop now, equally, we need to be raising that boy child, who we are saying needs to stop perpetuating it. So that is a dialogue that needs to be shared. That is a dialogue that needs to be had. So we need, as much as we need to empower the survivor, we need to educate and empower the perpetuator as well. So we need to break that cycle and start fostering healing. So the issues at hand. Violence against women and girls goes beyond physical harm. Survivors face deep, enduring mental health challenges, including depression, anxiety, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, isolation, and shame. Now, these words lately have been used flimsily. We're hearing them constantly. Everybody's talking about PTSD. Everybody's talking about depression and anxiety. Some are even saying depression is a luxury. Some speak of anxiety. What is important now is, are we able to identify it? Are we able to speak of it and on it in regards to the subject at hand, the issue at hand? Has it become so commercialized that now, when it presents itself, can it be taken at heart? Has it become so commercialized that nobody speaks up, especially those that actually need the help? So why does mental health matter? Addressing mental health is critical to healing survivors. What is more important as well is, do the survivors speak up? Do they come? Do they actually tell their story? Is there room for them to speak? Is there room for them to actually come and say, hey, this is what's going on with me? So how do we break the cycle of violence for future generations? So this loops back to what I was saying. Violence to be broken takes two people. We are speaking about the girl child. And yet the boy child has not been exercised. That muscle is not there. As loud as we can be about survival, as loud as we can be about the girl child, and we are talking about future generations, where is the boy child at hand? So the call to action. What is our responsibility? When you know, you know. We are here. We are talking about it. We have seen. We've experienced. We have acknowledged. It is resounding. Books have been written. Conversations have been had. We've gone into the streets. We have shamed. We've gone to court. We have spoken. We won't give up. That's why you see those hands there. So our responsibility is not giving up. Integrate mental health awareness, and of course, in trauma-informed care, into violence prevention strategies. We foster safe spaces where survivors can find support and solidarity. We empower women and girls to reclaim their voices and futures. And of course, we end this with hope. It is more than justice. It is an act of compassion and commitment to holistic well-being. Together, we can build a world where safety, dignity, and mental health are fundamental rights for every woman and girl. Now, the elephant in the room. The role of women in combating violence against women and girls. Now, we have taken it upon ourselves and said, we own it, the fight is ours, and we are going to continue on this path because we can see, we have acknowledged, and we recognize this fight is ours, and we are going to change future generations. So we're going to confront internalized challenges to strengthen our solidarity. Now, this conversation is very uncomfortable, but I'm going to try to make sure there's going to be a soft landing. And after this, I hope we can have a conversation because this ties along to what I'm talking about, the mental health, future generations, and how we move forward. So why does this conversation matter? Of course, we know violence against women and girls remains a pressing issue. And of course, we've recognized that women play an essential role in combating this violence. Where are the boys? Where are the men? We continue to speak louder than the men. I'm not saying men have not joined this fight because they have, some do. but some actions or attitudes may unintentionally contribute negatively. So this discussion, very short, aims to reflect, learn, and foster accountability. So we have the internalized misogyny. What do I mean by that? Downplaying or dismissing violence due to patriarchal norms. Blaming survivors, which perpetuates victim blaming. Again, not making room for a boy child. It discourages survivors from seeking help, or speaking out. And us not making room for this fight, there's no change. I understand we are making our girl children stronger, but we're not helping the future generations if we are not educating the boy child. Reinforcing harm-through narratives, statements like, boys will be boys. They excuse abusive behavior. I work in the education sector, and I'm a mother as well. Once in a while, we have amazing conversations. And in those conversations, I do hear mothers, because I'm a mother with girls, and some of my colleagues have boys. And trust me, when you hear, oh, my boys were doing this, my boys were doing that, and oh, boys are so difficult to deal with. Oh, you're so lucky you have girls. And it's a very, it's not a heavy statement. It's a very non-judgmental statement, but there's still that connotation of boys will be boys. Boys are like that, you know? And then the complicity of silence. And of course, before I even forget the harmful stereotypes of pressure on women to conform to societal roles. Chinamanda Ngozi, just yesterday, it's funny, she said, uh, girls were not born with a cookbook or something with a menu, or rather a cookbook in their vagina. So it doesn't mean, due to societal roles, a girl child should know how to cook and not a boy child. A boy child should be taught how to cook, should be taught how to do certain things for survival. Just because he's a boy, it doesn't mean he shouldn't be taught how to do house chores and things like that, or you leave it to the girl child just because it's a girl. And this was something she said during one of her talks, and I thought that was quite interesting because it's true. Because again, we are the ones raising them. The danger of silence. Failing to speak out enables violence to persist. Loyalty, fear, or conflict avoidance often leads to inaction. A call to accountability. Women must reflect on societal norms shaping their attitudes. Actively choose solidarity and compassion over judgment or complicity. Open, non-judgmental dialogues are key to dismantling harmful behaviors. Together, we can break the cycle. So let's work to challenge harmful behaviors, support survivors, and foster a culture of healing and empowerment. Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen and we can have a conversation if needed.
Wow, wow. And a great conversation we surely will have. Wow, we just thank you, Neta. I can see Mama Shelley, who's going to be moderating the panel. So, Neta, also you will be in the panel with other great, beautiful minds who also evoke and challenge and dismantle. I love the words that you threw in there. We have to dismantle our own attitudes. And one thing that stuck to me, we are raising the boys. That's a tall order. And I love the fact that you said the elephant in the room. As women, today we are challenged. Maybe it's something we never really thought about. Let's take stock. Let's take accountability. Because remember, we are the very mothers who are raising the boys who become men. Let's sit on that for a while and ponder. And Natai is welcoming any comments, suggestions. She's got a good 7 minutes to take in your questions before we dive into the panel discussion. So if you have any questions for Netsai, she'll be happy to answer them at this point. Or if you have a comment put it in the comment section, the chat section, and we'll be happy to let her know. Do we have any questions? Silences? Yes, Mama Shelley, go ahead.
You know, it's an age-old phenomenon that we're dealing with. And Natai, I mean, you have brought up such salient points. And it has really got us to either to come to the realization that we can no longer sweep it under the rug and pretend that it doesn't exist, because it does. And we have to deal with it. Based on, we have to deal with it. But one of the issues that you mentioned was about how we dismantle our own attitudes. When I look at boys, how boys are raised, it's as if they are raised not to show emotions, right? Boys are not supposed to cry. If you cry, you're like a girl. You're soft. You know, if you're tough, you can't cry. So we're raising boys who have been traumatized, who have endured trauma, but have not been given the opportunity to speak about the trauma, release the trauma, show emotions about the trauma, because they are boys. They should be men. They should be tough. Now, when you look at the trauma that these boys turning into men can potentially afflict on a female, have you found in the work that you do that it is because they have not had the opportunity to release that anger and whatever emotions they're dealing with, resentment, bitterness, that now when they have to deal with a female now, here they are with the quote unquote helpless female. It's easier to release those feelings on her because they were never dealt with before. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are of that.
I have to say, from what I've recognized in most cases, when you look back to a lot of women that have faced a lot of abuse from at the hand of their partners, the few men do come from volatile backgrounds. They experienced this. They saw either their mother go through the same thing. They experienced seeing their mother go through the abuse as well. However, you also do see, to be fair, I've also seen some women go through the very same experience from where both parents were in a very loving relationship, but where a partner just exercised violence because he just felt he could, he felt he could. It's interesting. Most women, by the way, that's another thing that I noticed. Most women, again, this was just a brief, small study. It wasn't a big one. Most women that experienced violence, either were more educated than their partners. And they stayed. They stayed. And some of them stayed only because they had this thought process of saying, okay, there was this notion where, the more educated you were, the more likely chances were you would not get a husband. So if you did get one, keep him. And then she would always be at fault. She would always feel that emotion of saying, you know what, he has been emasculated because I make more money. So, the individual would always justify it that way. Because I make more money, he feels emasculated. So, that's the way it is. And you'd find this happening sometimes in immigrant communities within the marginalized community, especially when they would move, right? When they would move, let's say from Africa, right? And a lot of them, okay, it's like from what I did see, especially with the immigrant community, a lot of men would come, right? And they used to make a lot more money. And then they would come here. And let's say when they do come, most women it's actually usually easier for a woman to integrate because she would either go and do care work, right, as a PAB or do something like that. And this is the time during that time when they're trying to get their papers or something like that. So it's easier for a woman to integrate. However, for the man who has always been this, breadwinner, had, probably a managerial job or something like that, it would be difficult for them to then settle into another position, right? Either to go and work at a factory or something like that. That would be difficult. So you've got emasculation happening there. You've got now the roles have been, reversed. So now you can imagine what's going on, right? That being said, then you've got emasculation, you've got violence, you've got this happening in the household because the roles have been reversed. So in
Is
most
one
cases,
more, sorry,
sorry, go
one
ahead.
more question for the main champion. I'm not sure if they're still there.
Yeah, Uncle Charles, did we have a question from the men champions before we move on to the panel discussion? I would like to think they'll hold that thought and we'll move on to the next session whilst you all take a breather and let everything sit in with you. This has been jam-packed. We promised at the beginning that this was going to be a jam-packed session and there will be so much to unpack. So much to unpack. So without further ado, I'll just bring the panels before you and then Mama Shirley, Dr. Shirley will be able to start going on to the panel discussion. We will have from South Africa, Sarah Mia. Netai, once again, we welcome you back to the panel. Netai Walang was just presenting from Canada. And then we will have from Uganda, Catherine Aloa. We also have from Kenya, if she's with us today, Jessica Kamau. And all the way from Zimbabwe, Priscilla Munemo. Mama Shelley, those are your panelists for today, and the moderator in the panel discussion, none other than Dr. Regina Shirley Pierre Robertson. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining us from around the globe, we welcome you to the second session of our discussion today. The panel discussion that is being moderated, but by none other than Dr. Regina Shirley Pierre Robertson, all the way from the United States. Take it away, Mama Shirley. It's your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. Is it Natsai? Natsai? Boy, you really did a work on us with your opening. I thank you so much for that, because you've provoked us. You've provoked us now to go deep with this, and we have to. And I welcome all the panelists that are joining us here today. But I would like to go back to you to ask this question about that educated woman. That educated woman who would remain in a situation and justify herself, justify her staying, because she would think that the man has been emasculated, that the roles have switched. That's one aspect. What are your thoughts about the issues of shame, blame? Where do you see that fitting in to the reason for her remaining in that situation? Silence, doesn't want others to know that because of who she is, maybe in the community and the power she she holds in that community, is she really ready to risk her position and her power to say, I'm being abused?
I'm gonna go back to what Tamrek just said in the chat, right? Which is very similar. Tamrek said in the chat, if you don't mind me quoting you, Tamrek, Tamrek said, men are so badly treated by other men if they do housework. Women are badly treated by other women if they leave. And I'm going to tell you why. We shame one another so well. And we are so good at it. We shame one another if we stay. We shame one another if we leave. I used to, it was a meet and mingle somewhere in Montreal for Italian women, because I had this very close Italian friend of mine where we would meet as women. And I remember one of them left. It wasn't abusive, but she was not happy, you know. And in her leaving, and this is just in her leaving that marriage, what happened was she could no longer mix with her friends because now she could no longer be with them because she was no longer with her husband. And and that's the reason why I called it the elephant in the room. Because as women, we have been conditioned, and as much as we do not want to say this, we have been conditioned that that checkbox of that marital status, married, single, is part of our societal norms. It is a condition. It is not something that we want to talk about because we think we have evolved from it. So when this woman, who seems to have checked all the boxes, is now experiencing a transition where she has to uncheck one of the boxes, the first thing she does is to think about what people are going to say. But who are the people? We hear about these atrocious situations happening to women because she is the pastor's wife. The pastor beats her mercilessly until there's one incident that everybody talked about in Nigeria. She was in the choir, she was the pastor's wife until she died. They stay. And they stay because we judge. It's a conversation we don't want to have as women. We are in the streets. We are having this 16 days of ending violence. Yes, exactly, Tamrek. It's true. Yes, we've got the financial issues, all of these other things. But most of us, especially within the marginalized community, we need to understand that we have certain values that we grew up with. So when we come to North America and all, there's a lot of conforming a lot of evolving, a lot of systems that we cannot relate to. You know, I always like to give this example. I always say that, one of my papers was on FGM, female genital mutilation. And I brought it up one time during our discussions, and I said, people need to understand that, I was playing the devil's advocate in that paper. And I remember saying that that's the culture. I mean, I grew up in Zimbabwe, we don't have FGM. But I said with that paper, you need to understand who was holding the knife. It was another woman. It's the women that did it. Even though it was a cultural norm, who was holding the knife at the end of the day? And yes, they'll say it was a patriarchal, request because it came from the men. I'm like, no, but who held the knife? Who held it? And now if then we had, the West coming in and saying, oh, it's bad, it's this, it's that. But then you think about it, exactly. Women are afraid deep down to change what we have been taught as culture. Thank you very much, Tamara. That's true. We are afraid. And then when you think about it, now in Hollywood, what are they doing? They have injections to what? To tighten the vagina. And yet they were coming to the West saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. They are just doing it in a different way. So, what's changing?
Nothing.
And then you have got a president in the US who's able to talk smack about women. Exactly what I said, boys will be boys. He is the president of the United States of America. So where are we? That's why I'm saying we need, as much as we can talk as loud as we are doing right now, and we're not giving up, we continue to do the work. Where are the men in this conversation? Yes, I can see there are some. As we raise our voices, we need to reel in the men, the young boys. We need to take them on chokehold and bring them in, because these are the same men that are going to marry our daughters.
Our work is cut out for us. And we have to understand this. I heard this saying, if I don't, then who will?
Yeah.
If we don't, who will? I would love to know what this means.
It means yes, absolutely. Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Speak it out, sister.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And this is giving me shivers throughout my body, because this morning we're coming face to face. We're ending 2024 and we're going into 2025. And I'm getting chills. And the reason I'm getting chills is because the cells in my body is asking me the question, when? When will it stop? And what are we prepared to do to bring an end to this? Yeah, we can march and we can come on with the 16 days, but whose faces do we have to go up to and say enough is enough. And as Maya Angelou once said, when you enter the room, as you take your seat at the table, you're not entering the room as you, but you enter the room with everyone who has fallen, died, been inflicted, been affected by this issue. You're bringing them in with you, and you're speaking on their behalf. So they're depending on us. As you said, I like what you said, that presentations are one thing, but discussions are where we begin to get fired up in order to do the impossible. Make what seemingly looks impossible possible. When we get tired enough, when we get fed up enough, when it hits home, we're going to move. We're going to move. Now, there are other speakers on the panel, and I want to give others an opportunity to share their thoughts on what has been said so far. So, Maria, could you help me with the names?
Yes, ma'am, I will. We will have Priscilla from Zimbabwe in the order, and each response we will give you 2.5 minutes to respond to the panelists, to the question. Mama Shelley, say 3 minutes, because there's 3 minutes you'll have to respond to share your experience to the question that Dr. Shirley would have paused. And the order we will follow, we will have Priscilla Munema from Zimbabwe, Catherine Aloa from Uganda. We have Jessica Kamal from Kenya. Then we'll have Syra Mia from South Africa. Then Netai from Canada. So that will be the order of our panelists. And you all have 3 minutes each to respond to a question that will be posed to you by the moderator. And just briefly again, all the questions, please send them to the chat box, and then they will be addressed during the question and answer session. Thank you. So take it away, Priscilla.
Thank you. Please, can you come again with a question?
I am bringing the question as a result of what Sai spoke to us about. That boy, we were looking at the boy child, and we were looking at the elephant in the room, looking at the elephant in the room, the things that we are not like willing or prepared to talk about. That boy growing up, the way the difference, it may sound a bit long to you, but bear with me a little. The way we tend to socialize boys as compared to girls, that what the boys are not supposed to do, show emotions, and how the girls become the recipients of those emotions, that they are not being allowed to show. And also about the women remaining in situations where it would seem that there's shaming and blaming there. Netsai, she gave her perspective on why the woman would stay. And we're looking for additional responses because it is time for us to get together and become, as I said, become that force that we're not just talking now. We're not just talking, but we're making a move. We want to make that move. And it must be a concerted effort when where others would hear, the powers to be would hear that we are tired. We're tired of being abused. We need policies to be changed. We need our boys to be educated about what should and should not be in terms of relationships with girls and so on. So there's a myriad of issues that we're dealing with today when it comes to gender-based violence and the things that we continue to perpetuate as women and what we do not address.
Okay, thank you. I would want to take it from a different perspective. Not that I'm disputing the fact that the way that we are socializing the boys matters, but take for instance, what we are talking about would require us to deal with rewiring the way that the men that are there now think, because we are talking about the policies that are governing us today. And I would supposedly say that for us to change what's going on right now, it's more of we need a revolutionary approach, right? Because these men that are there now have been socialized into thinking or seeing things the way that they're acting now. And then we've got the boys that we're bringing up right now. What are we telling them? How are we what are we feeding to them that's going to change the outlook for tomorrow? So I would say that as much as socialization plays a pivotal role in this whole thing, what also matters is the fact that the victim, the perpetrator, what is their mental state? What is their mental state when they're doing whatever that they are doing? Yes, socialization plays a very big role. And how about the person that has been socialized right, but they decide to act out of violence? What is their mental state? Then again, I also want to take on the issue of maybe the victim, when they act out of shame, out of blame. Is it intentional? Do they have a control on the way that they're acting? Remember, we are talking about the mind and how the mind is so complicated. At times, behavior and what the mind wants can be two different things. So you may find a person wanting to do certain things, but because of the state of the mind, they are acting totally in the opposite way. So then again, shame and blame, maybe because of my time, I might not have the time to elaborate how scientifically that how a person acts. Shame and blame, it's all wired up in the mind, and it's a state of the mind. So, to some extent, the victim could actually be in an episode of some pathology, to say, the same as even the perpetrator. So, maybe I would probably tackle those issues from a different perspective. where we are saying, I do not want to use the word that maybe these people are already going through a certain problem. They're experiencing a certain problem already in their mind, for the lack of the right word to use. But I'm saying the way that we can probably define or describe their behavior is they're already going through some sort of pathological experience that is going on with them, that is making them act in the way that they're acting, both the victim and the perpetrator. So, as much as we are going to come up with awareness campaigns, how are we going to help these people tackling it from the way that I've just mentioned? Probably these people, they're already experiencing some pathological episode. So, how then do we go to the victim and tell them that this is what is happening to you? How then do we explain it to the victim that you're already in a state that needs help? Thank you.
I hear you. And that is so important, because when we come to the table to look at a particular situation, with my background in healthcare, one of the approaches we would make, take would not just be to have the sociological perspective, but we're coming from a holistic perspective. So, because remember, we're dealing with the mind, the body, and we're dealing with the soul, the spirit, the body. And when we're talking about the soul, we're talking about the mind, the will, and the emotions. So as we come together, it is so imperative that we have points of view coming, or research evidence coming from different areas. So we had Netsai and the work she does, and you are now coming from, you are coming with a biological perspective where the mind is concerned. And we all have, someone would come with a spiritual, the other one would come with a psychosocial. But when we gather the evidence together and we make it as one report, we see that no one part stands alone, because every behavior that is emitted, it is either because of a biological, a psychological, you name it, reason behind that behavior. So I really appreciate the point from which you're coming from, because that's very important. And I'm not sure how often when we sit around the table, we look for that piece whereby, is there a problem other than socialization? Is there some neurological problem that is causing this behavior to be emitted? So thank you so much for your perspective on this.
And the next one to come on will be Catherine from Uganda. Again, to respond to the same question the moderator posed. Catherine? I'm not sure if she fell off because she was here early on. Catherine, unmute yourself. Okay, go ahead.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Catherine, your communication is not the best. Do you want to write in the chat? Because we can hardly can hear you.
It just shows that the internet connectivity is a bit weak, but we can also try to help by shutting off our videos so that she's not lagging. But Catherine, if you can hear us, you can also one other way probably, if you come out of the room and come back in, sometimes it helps, and we will all shut off our videos so that probably that can help with the lagging. Or you can also send us some of the information through the chat, and we can try once again. Catherine, if you can hear us, just try to unmute.
She put a message that her communication is unstable, so I will suggest for her to write in the chat, and we could.
Wonderful. And Sarah from South Africa. Okay.
Hello? Can
Yes, Catherine.
everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Thank you very much. I was requesting for a question again. I didn't get it so clearly.
Is this Catherine?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello?
Catherine,
I don't know that question to respond to.
what we're dealing with, Catherine, right now is that elephant in the room. The things that we ought to be looking at that we're not. The things that maybe the old adage that we had in terms of the different expectations we have of boys and girls in terms of how they are raised, how their behavior, the expectations of how they behave, and the and how that impacts or impinges on future relationships, and what part of that can we look at as we go forward and we begin to move and speak on the issues that are so relevant and relatable to gender-based violence, sexual abuse, the sexual abuse of women and girls. What are some of the things that you believe that we need to change as we go forward?
I think we should continue with Zaira while we.
Right. It looks like Catherine dropped, so we
Yeah.
can continue to Zaira and right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hello everyone. Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm in with regards to answering this question, can everyone hear me? Let's start there. Okay, perfect. So hi everyone. Again. So with regards to answering this question, it's a very, very good question to ask. And I'm going to try to answer this question as fast as possible within the time frame. And I'm really, really sorry I'm late. I actually had a meeting that ran late and I'm still at the office, which is closing, but it's okay. I apologize. So basically, with regards to this question, it's very, very important to tackle. And when we list why it's important to tackle this question, we have to look at a few factors. Firstly, when it comes to the effects with regards to men and boys, boys are taught from a very, very early age to not cry, firstly, to not show their emotions, to basically set a certain standard, okay? And they're meant to be providers in a household. Okay, so when they grow up to a certain age, they think that they can a boss woman around. They can do what they want. They can do whatever. They can have many wives. Okay, they can kind of do what they can be a Casanova. There's a mindset. Okay, that happens most of the time. When it comes to women are belittled in a sense. They are put down. So when they grow up, okay, they get this kind of mindset that they have to kind of dumb it down, you know. They have to just keep quiet when they beaten, when they hit. They have to just keep quiet. And they grow up in a kind of household where they just have to keep quiet. They have to just, if they hit, if they beat up, they see their mother go through this phase. Okay. And they learn that behavior. So it's a learned behavior over and over again. You've seen your mom go through it. I have to do it. I've seen my grandmother go through that. I have to do it as well. It's a learned behavior. So your dad doesn't cry, so I mustn't cry. My grandfather doesn't cry, I mustn't cry. It's a learned acquisition. Okay. And when I studied psych, that is a learned behavioral trait. My grandfather's a Casanova, so I should be a Casanova. My grandfather had 5 wives. I should have 5 wives as well. So so I'm Muslim. So we allowed to have 5 wives. But in Sharia, and I'm gonna go to Sharia law. Sharia law governs that you can have 5 wives, provided, and in Islam, provided that you maintain 5 wives and you give the same amount of money to each of your 5 wives. And only if your income allows you to. Okay, firstly. Secondly, if you have those 5 wives, you have to have the ability to maintain each one of them. And you have to have a reason for having them. And you can't take another wife unless you have told that wife why you are taking the other wife. So you can't just say, oh no, I like that one. Let me go take her. Okay? You have to have a reason. Is she a widow that you are taking that wife? Are you taking her because she was orphaned? Are you taking her because you would like to maintain her for a certain reason? Why are you taking her? That is Sharia. Okay? So there's a reason for why you're taking that wife. You're not just taking her because you just want to. You're taking her for a purpose. As a man, you are a provider. In Islam, you are a provider. And people must interpret why in Islam. Okay? So, from a background, from an understanding, we all have to understand men are taught not to cry, women are taught to cook and clean, they must be barefoot and pregnant. And that is transformed into our society today. So, when we grow up, we are taught from our mothers, from our fathers. Our fathers teach us to not cry. And as females, we are taught to do certain actions. And what happens is that we see our father beating our mother day by day. And then we go out and we get our girlfriend, and then we beat our girlfriend as well. So what happens? That behavior is now learned, and then we do that, And then the next person does it to the next person, and the next person does it to the next person. So what happens is a vicious cycle. And then what happens during December? December time, pedophile sees a young child walking on the street, okay? And they're like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to go out and go and scope the environment, and this is lovely, and here we go. And it's a great time for me to do this, okay? And I'm not talking about gender-based violence, I'm talking about society in general. It's a sick world, okay? So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, as a community, gender-based violence is a very, very big topic, but we have to think about our children as well. I'm sorry I went off topic, but yes.
No, go ahead. It's very interesting because this is what I said, that even though we're talking about gender-based violence, sexual abuse, it does not happen in a silo.
Mm.
It does not happen. We have to look at all the components that comes together
Yeah.
to for this to happen. And then now our cultural perspective, the way we grew up, how do we look at that? Do we just a blind eye, or as you're saying, this is what we grew up with? It's the norm in our society. And because it's the norm, it's very difficult to break that, penetrate that wall, because it's a given from your grandparents, from their parents, and you name it. It's generational. It's almost as if we have inherited a legacy of abuse. A legacy of abuse. So how do we begin to penetrate that wall that exists, so that it could be understood that this is not normal? It never was. It never will be.
Exactly.
What can we do? And the only way we can begin the process is with what we're doing, what Maria and her team puts together, the 16 days of activism. And as we come together and we talk, we strengthen each other. We strengthen each other in terms of realizing that maybe what might seem little to you is not really little. It's really important, because you are not alone. You're not fighting alone, and you never will be alone. We want to break this legacy. We want to break this legacy. So as we look at it, there's something that I've started doing. It's called leading while bleeding. So we're bleeding and we're leading, but we're not talking about the bleed. We're covering up the bleed, but we're bleeding and we're getting weak. We're getting anemic.
Yes, that's
Some
true.
things that are bleeding, but
that's true.
Culturally, we keep our mouth shut. We got to stop that.
True.
So here we are, before Maria calls the next person. And I thank you so much for what you have contributed, because as I said, each piece matters. As we work on the tapestry that we're preparing in order to deal with this issue, not just talk, but our actions that would bring about change. We're putting this tapestry together. Now, how can we approach mental health and self-care? How do you see or you envision self-care with all that has been discussed so far with 16 days of activism and all that is yet to come on the platform? This today is mental health. So when we look at self-care for the survivors of this abuse, we're not just looking for health care for the survivors, We're also looking at self-care for those who are providing
Yes.
care for the
Yes.
survivors. Mentally, where are you? Do you believe that what you're doing is important? Where does it resonate in you that this is wrong? Or is it just a job you're doing? Or is it a work, a purposeful work that you believe this is part of your very being? It hurts when you come across this. Mentally, we need to know, as caregivers, is it a job or is it divinely inspired work that we're doing? The next.
So, Catherine, we'll start just again on the panelists. We hope you'll be able to maintain 3 minutes to respond to the question. With that, the order will go, we'll start with Catherine, and then Netsai, Priscilla, and Sarah. Did I miss anyone? I don't think so. Okay, so Catherine, we see you're here. Okay.
Yes. Thank you once again for the opportunity. I'm sorry about my connectivity. Yes, to answering that, I think as a caregiver of SGB survivor, we should take this role as a divine purpose, something that you're doing it wholeheartedly with all the passion, and you're doing it when you're having a target. At the end of the day, what do you look forward to achieving? So I think you have to first look into yourself as a caregiver. How are you standing? And how are you going to look at these survivors? How are you going to address them? How are you going to start with them before you start in anything else? So I think we have to first build trust with them, and we model a respectful relationships with the survivors so that they get to know who you are and how you're going to support them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and for that response. Then we'll move on to Netsai, followed by Priscilla, then Sarah.
Okay. I was just trying to come up with something right now, because sometimes, right, when I think self-care it's a trending word, right? It's everybody's talking about self-care, so you kind of like want to make sure you state how it looks like, and it's situational, right? It's not easily done. It's not a one fits all. So I'm gonna try my very best to be conscious of that as well, right? So in the context of gender-based violence, or GBV, which obviously impacts millions globally, and it leaves survivors, advocates emotionally, physically, and mentally drained, because it is a heavy statement. It is a heavy, subject matter as well. It is not a personal choice. It's not something you tell yourself you got to do. It is a lived experience. Self-care has to be lived. It's not something that you look at as a tool to fix you. It is something that has to be experienced. And for survivors that face the trauma, it impacts every aspect of their lives. So physically, that means seeking medical care, prioritizing rest. Emotionally, connecting with loved ones. And then you've got the trust aspect. Who can they speak to? Are they ready to speak to someone? Because when they do, and if they do they feel exposed? And how are they going to find their joy after speaking to somebody and after going through what they go through? Mentally, how are they going to start challenging self-blame? Did I do something? Was it my fault? Mindfulness. This is a journey that they are going to walk alone. No matter how much we are going to be advocates and allies, it is a journey that is only going to be walked by the abuser, by the person that has been abused. Self-care for you and me, the advocates and the allies. We cannot give up. We are going to have to set boundaries. And what does that look like? When we experience fatigue, we have to have limits. We have to respect our limits as well. I know most of you have been doing this for a very long time. And us newbies, when we see you, Tamrak, Maria, Doc, the first thing I'm like wanting not to ask is how long you've been in it. Because if you're going to tell me how long you've been doing it, I will give up. Especially if you're going to tell me how long. I will experience fatigue just by hearing how long you've been in it. And I will give up. And that is me coming from a place of truth. Build a support network like the one that you have here. Now, I do not know how long we are going to maintain that. Join peer support. Focus on health. And then there's the power of community care. Self-care means advocating for systemic change, raising awareness, pushing for policies, fostering healing spaces. But yes, we need to just play a vital role. And that's all we can do. Thank you.
Wow, so much to unpack, so much to unpack. Wow, I'm in awe with all these presentations and your give back. So much and yet so much. And there's that urge to continue the discussions. We move on to Priscilla. What are your thoughts?
Thank you. Self-care. that's looking after yourself. It's mental health work, interesting, but at the same time sad, because the toll it takes on the caregiver can be emotionally exhausting. And as much as it's important to take care of yourself, you also have to keep in mind that sorry, as much as it's important to take care of the victim, you also have to keep it on your toes that it's important to take care of yourself. So yes, your emotional needs, that means that you need to get a helper for yourself. I think in certain areas legally, they actually tell you that after every 3 months, you need to get a helper who helps you as a caregiver. So, as a caregiver, you definitely need someone who's going to be helping you. And that's probably means maybe a personal therapist or support groups are very important. And at the same time, you always have to remember to set boundaries. As much as you might really want to go into it with your all, yes, you do go into it with your all, but you need to set limits so that your own mental health is well taken care of. So, yes, look after yourself, and at the same time, just get a helper for yourself. Thank you.
And I think the next panelist, Mama Shirley, is Sarah from South Africa. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so in terms of everything with regard to mental health, in terms of survivors and basically in terms of mental health practitioners, which we are focusing on. In terms of mental health practitioners, we have to basically focus on they are in terms of mental health practitioners, we have to analyze this and unpack it. They they are the bulk of it. They get the gist, they get everything on their shoulders, and they carry the burden, they carry the weight. And as much as it's empowering and it's motivating, and you feel empowered, and you feel guided, and you feel loved, and you feel welcome, unfortunately the result is, they deal with a lot. Okay. At the end of the day, we have to seek some sort of guidance, and we have to look after yourself in terms of self-care. So I'm gonna give you a few tools because I always do give tools. So in terms of that, I'm gonna touch on the point of boundaries. So as a counselor, you always have to have boundaries. Okay, boundaries are most important. If you do not have boundaries in counseling, what happens is you go into a counseling session, you fall in love with your client, and things happen. I don't know what happens after that, right? So you have to have boundaries firstly. Self-care. When it comes to self-care, you have to look at it in a perspective of your mental health is most important. In everyday life, it's most important. But in terms of mental health, in terms of yourself, because you don't know what you go through on a daily basis. And when I spoke about it in a previous session in terms of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, you take on because you're taking on so much of empathy, you're taking on so much of care, you're taking on so much of every emotion from everything that you are counseling, everything that you are dealing with in terms of everything that's going on. You need to look at your emotions. So at the end of the day, you have to think about the things that are happening and how do we cope with that? How do we deal with that? The first thing is that you can take an Epsom salt bath, as I said before. The second thing is that in lukewarm water. The second thing is meditation, and you can exercise. Exercise stimulates the brain, and when we think too much, we touch our heads. you can see me already. I begin to touch my head too much because your prefrontal cortex in the front of your head is working too much. That's because we're using our brains too much. The back of your brain is located here in the back. So you'll notice when you're using the prefrontal cortex too much in the back of your brain, these two start to hurt a lot, okay? So when you have a headache, these two hurt, okay? That's the front and the back. Also, at the end of the day, those are the first two. And then this also develops very, very later on in life. So when this is fully developed, your thinking happens very, very quickly. So it happens faster when you're older. So basically you should have warm towel. You can place it on the top of your head when you come home from work and have a stressful day, especially if you're a mental health practitioner. You can use that or cold ice pack for the front of your head if you're a mental health practitioner. Also, you can also take meditation, long walks, yoga, relieve yourself. If you are a practitioner, you need a psychologist. Psychologists need psychologists. It's the matter of life. Even the most intelligent people need help. We all need help. Unfortunately, the reality is that there's no perfect person. There's always room for improvement. Okay? I need improvement. You need improvement. We all need improvement. We can't say that I'm perfect. Nobody's perfect. Okay? So there's room for improvement. In addition to that, we can always build on improvement. You can get a support group. If there's all practitioners, you can all support each other. You can share each other's wellness, like a wellness check, okay? There is also other wellness communities that you could go to assist you if you can't afford it, and they can do checks on you to assist you, okay? So in terms of that, there are meditation techniques, and cognitive behavioral therapy, as I touched on before, is the most effective therapy that I know of to do, as well as coaching. If you want to go to a counselor that's effective, there is something called horse therapy, everybody, which is very therapeutic, and it works with patients that actually have other mental illnesses, and you can actually go to a counselor and they will take you through the process, because horses actually have a healing effect. If you want to know a little bit about that, you can ask me about it. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Questions?
Wonderful. You know, what I love about this session is the diversity. I haven't heard us go this way before, and Maria, this is so great because it's the diversity of ideas, of strategies that we can use, the way that our vision is expanded in terms of not just looking. I mean, I know that Maria and her team, they dig deep when it comes to SGBV. But it seems as if this year it has been taken to another dimension, a higher dimension. And this part of the mental health discussion, it's just blowing my mind where you all are going, and we're not just sticking to like signs and symptoms and so on, but it's so diverse, the diversity in terms of the discussion, in terms of where people are coming from culturally. It excites me to see that. My goodness, here is a community, and with these kinds of ideas, I mean, where this can be taken, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. And for all the parts that we have touched, and particularly I love the part of the therapist needing a therapist, because it is so important. You take on so much of other people's problems, and you take that home with you, and it's packed on top of your own issues. And you can drown yourself in all of this. So you need to be able to expel that. You need to be able to pull yourself out of all of the stuff that has been packed on you during the day as you work. And for some people, it might be music. I know for me, I love music. I put my music on and it calms me, and it's all stress related. How do we deal with issues of stress? Recognize that I'm stressed out, and to know that in order to have that good mental health, we have to have truth. We have to face our truth, that this is what I'm dealing with. It is real, and it is impacting me emotionally. And my body is reacting to it, whether it's high blood pressure, because it says, when you think of those issues that impact us, our bodies, it's all stress related. The root of it is all stress related. So we have to understand that even for those of us that are gender-based violence, for myself, as I would like to call myself, I don't see me as a victim of gender-based violence. I am recovered. I'm recovered from that, and I've had to accept this is what has happened to me, but it didn't come to make me into a bitter person, a resentful person, hating all men for what was done to me, etc. It's my story, but how can I use my story as a benefit to others now who are dealing with the same issue but are ashamed, fearful, believe that they were to blame? It's something they did that initially caused that behavior to be emitted. And it's about dealing now with our mental health, our minds, to know that, you know what? I am such an awesome person. So you can go into your I ams now, into your I am, and learn to forgive. That has been a big part for me in mental health, in having to have good mental health, is to let go. Let go. Forgive who hurt me, and learn now to forgive myself for the way I treated myself, to the way I encapsulated myself and kept myself in a silo. Yes, I was pursuing educationally, I was pursuing goals, but emotionally, and where my mind was in terms of my who. It is important that we come to that place where we understand our who. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I? What was I sent to do? What have I learned from this situation? What are the lessons that I learned? And one of the things I'm suggesting to us today is that think about what is being said about the need to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So what are we learning about gender-based violence now that we need to unlearn? Those false narratives that have perpetuated this situation, we need to unlearn. And we need to relearn. As we learn, we relearn, and we begin to change our narrative. And we can see that indeed we do have the power. We do have the mental capacity and capability to bring about change within the global community. If only we would be brave enough to say, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Remember, Barack Obama was not supposed to be the first Black American president of the United States of America. But guess what? When he was campaigning, there was an older woman. Listen to the wisdom of the older women, the wise sage. This older woman would get together, they said 5 o'clock in the morning after they've had their meeting, and in a state, North Carolina, that they said he would never win. 5 o'clock in the morning, this older woman, they would gather the troops together and they would come up with their strategies. She would unfold the strategies that they would use for the day. And before they would leave to go out door to door to canvass for him, she would tell the troops, fired up, ready to go. So I say to you today, we're fired up and we're ready to go. Change must come. No more excuse. We can do it. Mentally, we have the capacity, the capability, and we have the community to get it done. Maria?
Wow, wow. Thank you so much, Mama Shirley, Dr. Shirley. It's always a pleasure. And just before we sum it all up and wrap it up, we just want the panelists to have one final say.
Yes.
What would be the message in 1 minute? In 1 minute. So there's 4 of you. So I expect to be done in 4 minutes or 5. In 1 minute, you're given the center stage. What would be your parting words to the world? 1 minute when it concerns mental health. We've just been inspired. The time is now. We are not stopping. We are fired up. Get ready and let's go. And in the order, we'll start with Priscilla, Catherine, Netai, no, I beg your pardon. Priscilla, Catherine, Sarah, and Netai. Take it away. Is Priscilla still there?
Yeah, she is. At least in the screen. Let's continue with Sarah.
And we'll let Catherine, whilst we're waiting for Priscilla, Catherine, take it away. What would be your final message in 1 minute? What would you want them to remember? It is something to take away from you.
Wow, it's been a great honor joining in today's field discussion on mental health. I would like to let us know that mental health will always start with you first. You consider yourself first. When you're safe, then you can make sure that others are also safe. When you love yourself first, then you can spread the love into others as well. So I think we regard ourselves first as even we're handling these survivors. Thank you very much. Thank you for voicing out on the gender-based violence. And as we continue, I would like us to continue raising our voices. Thank you so much, everyone, and wish you a blessed day, a blessed night, and a blessed afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Catherine. Definitely appreciate you all the way from Uganda. So we will move on to Sarah from Johannesburg, South Africa. What would be your parting words? What would you want everybody to take note in 1 minute?
Okay, so in 1 minute, my parting words would be, firstly, it's the semicolon tattoo. If anybody knows the semicolon tattoo, it's basically it's for mental health awareness, and mental health awareness basically symbolizes the semicolon tattoo basically symbolizes when before something ends, instead of something ending, it doesn't end, it continues. So for mental health awareness, we would basically not something not end, it would just continue. And instead of that ending, like life ending, it would just continue. And we just need to keep awareness and keep being aware about mental illnesses. And we just need to keep like be aware of mental health and mental illnesses, and know that as women and as adults and as children, we need to know that mental illnesses exist, and we need to be aware that stuff like this exists, and it's okay to just not be okay, and we can get help. So,
Wow, it's okay not to be okay. Wow, wonderful. I like that, the part of the semicolon. We're going to look and probe into it more in the future. And moving on, Nitsai, what would be your parting words? What message would you say in 1 minute to the world beyond?
Okay, so for me, GBV is not just an attack on the body. It is an assault on the mind and our soul. Survivors do endure crippling trauma, anxiety, depression, and PTSD, which we talked about. It's trapped in cycles of fear, isolation, and shame. Their voices are often silenced, their pain dismissed, and their humanity denied. Mental health support for GBV survivors is not optional. It is a lifeline. Trauma-informed care, safe spaces, cultural sensitivity is essential for healing. But we must go further than that. It is a collective action. Dismantling stigma, holding perpetrators accountable, and empowering survivors and a collective generation, not only to reclaim power, but to also give dignity. Every life touched by GBV deserves not just survival, but recovery. We must act together, collectively, to break silence, to end violence, and to restore.
To unpack, what a closing. So much to unpack. It's not optional. It's a lifeline. We have to do it collectively. It cannot be done in silos, but in the collective. And Priscilla, finally, are you able to unmute yourself? Gonna go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm sure she'll have more to share with us in the near future. This session was not only humbling, but it was a learning space. There was so much to take away, so many nuggets. And what was humbling is the challenge to do more of these in the near future. So you are guaranteed when we come back into 2025, there'll be more discussions centered around this topic. But we want to thank all our speakers, the panelists, our wonderful keynoter, Mama Shirley. We appreciate you as always. We want to thank you. We've been inspired and motivated. We learned, we relearned, we unlearned, and we're to relearn. We're taken through a process of relearning. We were empowered. Our souls were uplifted to continue to do more. We were challenged to use the resources that were imparted to us today to take home into our communities and share and empower our communities. We were challenged to go and dismantle our attitudes, change of mindsets. We were tasked and brought to accountability as mothers. We were reminded we can no longer leave our boys in the conversation. And I want everything to sit. And Mama Shirley, with her parting, she said, we have been fired up. We are ready, steady, and go. The conversations are not stopping. Today we dismantled the mental health, brought in healing. Tomorrow we go to yet another difficult conversation. And Mama Shirley touched on it because tomorrow she'll be standing once again in the gap as we come in to discuss with the faith leaders the role of the church, engaging the faith factors and humanizing the cloth. We all know the role of the pastors. It is a vital link in stopping domestic violence. I always say this church speaks to the biggest population ever when you look at it, whether it's Saturday going or Sunday going. But they reach and touch lives. Yet so much hurt is happening in the church. We no longer want to point fingers at the church and blame them, but we want to bring them to the conversation. They too need help. We're told today that therapists need therapists. I believe when we share these voices, the church becomes the ally. And we're able to work towards a solution that will help us combat violence against women and girls. No longer will those be kept under wraps. The pastors will go through the education journey where they will be restored with the resources. It's okay to learn and unlearn and relearn for the betterment of all. These are difficult conversations. Neither will have our Canada Virtuous Women keynoter tomorrow, Adeline, who's always fired up. As she challenges, she's a woman of God. And tomorrow we have Dr. Shirley, who will be standing as an academician, as a researcher, as an ordained pastor. The hats she proudly wears. And we said, Mama, we may not, these shoes are too big for us to feel. Because sometimes we are held with so much emotion and passion. We might cross boundaries. And who else but to keep us still and calm besides Dr. Regina Pierre Robertson to do it for us tomorrow, because I said, Mama, when I spoke to her, I said, Mama, you know your friends, your allies, who better? Because sometimes we will find ourselves held with so much passion and emotion, and we may not be able to achieve the goal. So tomorrow we'll have Dr. Shirley Pierre Robertson joining us. From Kenya, we have Pastor Soki Masyoka. From the United States, we'll have Pastor Tonji Omen. From Nigeria, we'll have Pastor Tanji Adekeke. From Kenya, we'll have Bishop Isaac Amunga. And also, she's no stranger to us, but she's also a pastor. Sister Mercy Achu will also be in the panel. I hope she'll be there. But gracefully, by God's grace, tomorrow we will see a fired up, passionate forum where we will humbly discuss something that is quite difficult. So as we engage the faith factors in humanizing the cloth, please join us tomorrow for yet another fruitful discussion. Before you leave, we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Remember, you are the light, you are hope. And all we ask is you take hope, sustainable hope, to one woman, one girl, one man, one boy, one community at a time. And together we can. Thank you. Mucho gracias. Merci. Asante sana. Danki. Majita henyu. Siabonga. Till then.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Bye.
Thank you.